Your soulmate just discovered what you secretly did to protect them. They had no idea. Something happened last night that changed the way someone sees you. For a long time, there was something they did not understand about your actions. They saw the distance, the silence, the decisions you made, and the moments when you seemed to step backward instead of forward. They may have wondered why you stopped explaining yourself. They may have questioned why you allowed certain things to remain unsaid. They may even have believed that you simply stopped caring, but they did not know the whole story. They did not know what was happening behind the scenes. They did not know how many times you chose silence because speaking would have created another problem. They did not know how many times you protected someone without expecting recognition. They did not know that some of your hardest decisions were not made because you wanted to walk away, but because you believed that stepping back was the safest thing you could do. And last night, something changed. A truth they never expected to discover suddenly came closer to the surface. It may have started with a conversation. It may have been something someone said. It may have been an old message, a forgotten detail, a memory that suddenly made sense, or a piece of information that connected everything together. Whatever opened that door, the result was the same. They began looking at the past differently. Suddenly, moments that once seemed confusing started making sense. The silence had a reason, the distance had a reason, the choices had a reason, and perhaps the most surprising realization of all was this: you had been protecting them without making sure they knew. That realization can be powerful because people often judge actions before they understand intentions. Someone can look at a closed door and assume rejection. Someone can look at silence and assume indifference. Someone can look at distance and assume the connection has disappeared. But sometimes a closed door is not punishment. Sometimes silence is not coldness. Sometimes distance is not abandonment. Sometimes a person steps away because they are trying to prevent something from becoming worse. That may be the part that was finally understood last night. For a moment, imagine everything being placed on a table, every misunderstanding, every unanswered question, every moment that felt strange, every decision that seemed impossible to explain. One by one, the pieces begin connecting, and suddenly, the story looks completely different. The person who once wondered why you behaved a certain way may now be wondering something else. How did I not see this before? That question can stay with someone for a long time, because discovering someone's hidden kindness can be more powerful than hearing them announce it. You never needed to stand in front of everyone and say, "Look what I did." You simply made the decision you believed was right. You carried the consequences quietly. You continued moving forward, and you allowed time to reveal what words could not. That is why this discovery feels so significant. It is not merely about what happened. It is about what the discovery changes. When someone realizes that an action they misunderstood was actually motivated by protection, compassion, or concern, their entire interpretation of the past can shift. The memory does not change, the meaning does, and that is exactly what appears to be happening now. Something that once looked like rejection may begin looking like sacrifice. Something that once looked like coldness may begin looking like restraint. Something that once looked like giving up may begin looking like an attempt to prevent unnecessary pain. There is an important lesson hidden inside this moment. Not every good thing is immediately recognized. Sometimes you can do the right thing and still be misunderstood. Sometimes you can protect someone and receive no thanks. Sometimes you can make a difficult decision and watch another person interpret it completely differently. That does not automatically mean your decision was wrong. It means people do not always have access to the full story, and perhaps that is why this particular discovery feels so emotional. Someone has finally received information they did not have before. They are seeing a side of the story that remained hidden, and now they have to decide what to do with that knowledge. That is where the real change begins, because discovering the truth is one thing, knowing how to respond to the truth is another. They may feel surprised, they may feel regret, they may replay conversations in their mind. They may remember moments when they misunderstood you and wonder whether they should have asked more questions. They may even feel uncomfortable, realizing that they formed conclusions without knowing everything. But there is something beautiful about realizing you were wrong about someone's intentions. It creates an opportunity for a more honest understanding. Not a perfect understanding, not a fantasy, not a guarantee that everything suddenly becomes simple, but an honest one, and honesty is where meaningful connections begin. Perhaps this is why the message feels urgent, not because something supernatural must happen overnight, not because the future is already written in perfect detail, but because hidden truths have a way of changing the way people see one another. When truth enters a situation, confusion begins losing its power. The questions may not disappear immediately, but they become different questions. Instead of asking, "Why did they do that to me?" someone may begin asking, "What were they trying to protect me from?" Instead of asking, "Why did they leave?" they may begin asking, "What were they carrying that I could not see?" Instead of asking, "Did they care?" they may begin asking, "Could they have cared more deeply than I realized?" These questions matter, because sometimes the greatest misunderstanding between two people is not a lack of feeling, it is a lack of information. One person knows what happened behind the scenes, the other only sees the final result, and when the final result looks painful, it becomes easy to assume the worst. But there are always layers to human decisions. There are fears, responsibilities, boundaries, circumstances. Things people do not know how to explain. Things people believe they must handle alone, and sometimes there are acts of protection that never receive a name. That may be what this story represents, a quiet decision, a hidden sacrifice, a moment when someone chose to carry difficulty rather than allow another person to carry it, and now that hidden decision has been discovered. The discovery may have happened through another person. Perhaps someone finally told the truth. Perhaps a conversation revealed information that had been kept private. Perhaps a detail surfaced accidentally. Perhaps someone remembered something they had forgotten. Sometimes truth does not arrive dramatically. Sometimes it arrives in one simple sentence. One sentence can change the meaning of years of memories. One sentence can make someone sit quietly and reconsider everything. one sentence can make a person realize, "I never knew." And those 3 words can carry enormous weight. I never knew. I never knew what they were dealing with. I never knew why they made that choice. I never knew what they were trying to prevent. I never knew how much thought went into that decision. I never knew. That realization can be humbling. And perhaps someone is feeling that humility now. They may not know what to say yet. They may need time to process everything. That does not necessarily mean they do not care. Sometimes people become quiet because they are thinking deeply. Sometimes a revelation creates more questions before it creates answers. Sometimes a person needs to sit with the truth before deciding how to communicate. So do not assume that every silence means nothing. Silence can mean many things. It can mean confusion. It can mean reflection. It can mean regret. It can mean someone is trying to understand how they want to respond. And when someone discovers something important about another person, rushing toward an immediate reaction is not always the healthiest choice. Understanding takes time. The most meaningful changes often happen slowly. A person realizes something. They think about it. They remember the past. They compare what they believed with what they now know. Then, eventually, they decide what they want to do differently. That process cannot be forced, but it can be respected. And perhaps the most important part of this entire message is not whether someone suddenly runs back into your life or makes a dramatic declaration. The most important part is that the truth has become visible. Your intentions no longer have to remain completely hidden. The story is becoming clearer. And clarity is powerful, because when clarity arrives, you no longer have to spend every moment trying to convince someone of what you meant. You can let reality speak. You can allow actions to have their own meaning. You can stop carrying the responsibility of making everyone understand you. There is freedom in that. You are allowed to know why you made a decision. You are allowed to recognize your own intentions. You are allowed to move forward even when someone else does not immediately understand you. And if someone eventually discovers the truth, let that discovery belong to them. Let them process it. Let them learn from it. Let them decide what it means. You do not have to chase their reaction. You do not have to force an apology. You do not have to demand recognition. Sometimes the strongest position is simply standing peacefully in the truth of your own choices. That does not mean refusing communication. It does not mean avoiding accountability. It means understanding that your worth is not determined by how quickly another person understands you. That distinction matters, because when a person has spent a long time feeling misunderstood, it can become tempting to seek validation from the person who misunderstood them. But your peace cannot depend entirely on someone else's interpretation. You can welcome understanding without needing it to survive. You can appreciate recognition without requiring it. You can accept an apology without pretending the past never happened, and you can forgive without automatically returning to the same circumstances. That is emotional strength. Perhaps this discovery is not only about another person's realization. Perhaps it is also about your own realization. Maybe you are beginning to understand how much strength it took to make certain decisions. Maybe you are recognizing that you did not always have perfect answers, but you still tried to act with care. Maybe you are realizing that protecting someone does not mean sacrificing yourself endlessly. Healthy protection includes boundaries. Healthy care includes honesty. Healthy connection includes mutual respect. That is something worth remembering. A meaningful connection should not require one person to disappear so the other can feel safe. It should not require endless guessing. It should not depend entirely on secrets. Eventually, truth must become part of the relationship between people, and if this new discovery creates a chance for honest communication, that opportunity can be valuable. Not because everything must immediately become perfect, but because two people deserve the chance to understand what actually happened. Imagine a conversation where there is no need to perform, no dramatic speeches, no manipulation, no attempt to make someone jealous, no pressure, just honesty. I made that decision because I thought it was necessary. I did not explain everything because I was afraid the situation would become worse. I wanted to protect you from something I did not know how to discuss. I realize now that my silence may have hurt you. Those kinds of statements are powerful because they acknowledge both intention and impact. That is important. A good intention does not automatically erase someone's experience. Protecting someone does not mean they cannot have been hurt by what happened. Both truths can exist. You can have meant well, and someone can still have felt confused. You can have wanted to protect someone, and they can still have wished you had communicated. You can have made the best decision you knew how to make, and you can still learn from it. That is what maturity looks like. It does not demand that one person be completely right and the other completely wrong. It asks what can be understood now that could not be understood before, and perhaps last night's discovery creates exactly that opportunity. The past cannot be rewritten, but its meaning can be understood more accurately. The future cannot be guaranteed, but it can be approached with greater honesty, and the present is where choices are made. So if someone has discovered what you secretly did to protect them, do not immediately turn the discovery into a fantasy. Let it be what it is, a moment of truth, a moment of understanding, a moment when hidden information became visible, a moment that may encourage better communication. A moment that may change someone's perspective, and perhaps, most importantly, a moment that reminds you that quiet actions can have consequences long after they are made. You may never know how deeply a single decision affects another person. You may never know which moment someone remembers years later. You may never know which act of kindness changed the direction of a situation. That is why acting with integrity matters, not because everyone will notice, not because everyone will praise you, but because you know what kind of person you want to be. There is a special kind of strength in doing what you believe is right without needing applause. It is not always easy. Sometimes it is lonely. Sometimes it is misunderstood. Sometimes you question yourself, but when the truth finally comes to light, you may discover that the quiet choices mattered more than you realized, and perhaps someone else is discovering that now. They may be remembering details they once ignored. A conversation, a pause, a strange decision, a moment when you seemed distant, a time when you refused to say more. At the time, those moments may have looked ordinary. Now they may look completely different. That is how perspective works. We often understand old moments through new information. A memory does not have to change for our interpretation of it to change, and when interpretation changes, emotions can change too. Confusion can become understanding, anger can become reflection, regret can become responsibility, distance can become an invitation to communicate more honestly. That does not mean every connection is destined to continue. This is important. Sometimes understanding someone better leads people closer. Sometimes it helps them let go peacefully. Both outcomes can be meaningful. The purpose of truth is not always reunion. Sometimes the purpose of truth is freedom, freedom from false assumptions, freedom from unnecessary guilt, freedom from endless questions, freedom from carrying a story that was never complete. So whatever happens next, let truth be enough. If the person chooses to communicate, listen carefully. If they apologize, consider what they are actually saying. If they ask questions, answer honestly when you feel comfortable. If they need time, allow time. And if they do not respond the way you hoped, remember that your truth still has value. You cannot control another person's reaction. You can only control how you respond to what comes next. That is where your power lives, not in forcing a particular outcome, not in trying to predict every future moment, but in choosing honesty, dignity, patience, and self-respect. Perhaps this is the deeper message behind everything that happened last night. Something hidden has been revealed. Something misunderstood is becoming clearer. Someone who once saw only the surface may finally be seeing the deeper story, and now the question is not simply whether they understand. The question is what everyone chooses to do with that understanding. Will it become an opportunity for healthier communication? Will it become a lesson about assumptions? Will it encourage people to speak sooner instead of disappearing into silence? Will it inspire greater respect for boundaries? Will it help someone recognize the difference between protecting another person and trying to control their choices? These are the questions worth carrying forward, because real connection is not built from dramatic predictions. It is built through consistent actions, respect, honesty, listening, boundaries, trust earned over time, and the willingness to recognize when something needs to change. Perhaps someone has just taken the first step toward that realization. Maybe they are looking at the past and thinking about everything differently. Maybe they are wondering how many signs they missed. Maybe they are realizing that the person they thought they understood was carrying a story they never knew existed. And perhaps the greatest surprise is not what you did, it is why you did it. Because the reason behind an action can change everything. A decision that looked careless can become understandable. A choice that looked distant can become compassionate. A moment that looked like rejection can reveal an attempt to prevent harm. That does not make every decision automatically perfect, but it makes the story more complete, and sometimes completeness is what people need in order to heal. So take a breath, let the past remain where it belongs. Do not spend tonight trying to recreate every conversation. Do not punish yourself for what you could not explain at the time. Do not assume you must immediately fix everything. You have already done something important by choosing according to what you believed was right. Now let truth do its work. Let people think. Let emotions settle. Let conversations happen naturally. Let actions reveal whether the new understanding is genuine, because words can be emotional in a moment. Actions show what someone truly chooses afterward. That is what matters. If someone understands you now, they should eventually demonstrate that understanding through respect. If someone regrets their assumptions, they can show that through changed behavior. If someone wants to rebuild trust, they can do so patiently. No dramatic promise is required. No perfect speech is required. Consistency is stronger than intensity, and perhaps that is the real beginning hidden inside this revelation, not a fantasy ending, not an instant transformation, a beginning based on something much more valuable, understanding. Someone finally knows something they did not know before. You finally have an opportunity to stop carrying the entire story alone. And the future can now be shaped by what is actually true rather than what people assumed was true. That is a powerful place to stand. You do not need to chase anyone. You do not need to prove your worth. You do not need to force someone to understand. You simply need to remain honest about your own choices and thoughtful about what comes next. If this revelation brings two people toward healthier communication, let it happen naturally. If it creates closure, allow closure to be meaningful. If it teaches someone an important lesson, let that lesson remain. And if it reminds you that you are capable of making difficult choices out of genuine concern, carry that knowledge forward without turning it into a burden. You deserve connections where care does not have to remain a secret forever. You deserve communication where people can ask questions instead of making assumptions.